My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds or geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Pound. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverses, Mega Christmas, Grinch's franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
Forever.
I don't know if you can tell in my video here, Beeper, but I'm wearing a pink golf shirt today because it is the third Sunday of Advent, which means it's the...
of course. Yeah. We're all very happy.
It's a joyful day.
Yeah.
Oh, which means there's only 2 weeks at the time of our recording, 2 weeks until Christmas.
Yep. It also means there's still 2 weeks of school, but you know.
This is my favorite kind of year. When I was a kid, I always loved when school went all the way to like December 22nd or 23rd, because that meant that the worst for me are the weeks where you're home for like a whole week before Christmas and you're just sort of waiting for Christmas to happen. And then you're back to school like January 2nd. The worst. Yeah.
I mean, I like this type better also, but that's mostly because my birthday, this type of a Christmas break ensures that my birthday is still during the break, which isn't always the case, which is a fun time.
I wonder if there's a parallel universe where we're the same age, where you were born 4 days early.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were like, we reversed our birthdays, or we're just born on the same day.
Yeah, because if you were born 4 days earlier, we technically would have been born in the same calendar year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, same calendar year, but it would be what, 6 days? No, 7 days.
Well, my birthday is December 30th, so...
Yeah, so a week.
5? No, because your birthday is the 4th, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, 9 days, not 7. Yeah. Or wait.
Okay, 4 days in January.
Yeah, sorry,
2.
6. Yeah, 6, not 7. Right. Yeah, so, yeah, we're almost a week apart.
The joke, of course, people who haven't been listening for years, is that Beeper and I were only born 5 days apart, 6 days apart. But because I was born at the end of December and he was born at the beginning of January, I'm technically a whole year older than he is.
Yeah, it's kind of like I have a cousin who's born the same year as me, but she's born in December. But we're born in the same year, so we're technically the same age, but not really.
Yeah, I hold those 6 days where I'm older than you.
Oh, of course.
Over you, very. But then for the most of the year, we are at the same aging, so, you know. Guess what happened to me, Beeper?
You decided to move out preemptively. I don't know. You're in a different background.
Yes. Well, so people, listeners of the podcast may care to know, I'm going to be moving temporarily to Nova Scotia to be in the same city as Tater Tot before we get married.
Woo!
And yeah, the only subletter I could find from my condo is someone who needed a place to stay starting mid-November. So friends have graciously had me stay in their basement for the last 4 weeks, and they're putting me up for one more week so that I don't have to pay for my condo and then also pay for housing in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, that's always fun when that works out.
But guess what else happened to me?
You got a new fidget toy.
This is technically not mine, but I won a contest.
Oh,
on a podcast.
That's cool.
So
are we going to have podcast contests
now?
Because you won one, you're going to put like 50% of the prize towards making a prize for our podcast?
Well, the prize I won is like kind of merchandise. It's not like I'm winning money or anything.
Hmm.
So there's this podcast I've listened to for years called Supergirl Radio. It's a podcast that is dedicated to the live action Supergirl TV show.
I was gonna say it's probably a DC thing and not that song from Princess Diaries.
No. I started listening to this podcast like in 2015 before the show had even started, and I eventually stopped watching Supergirl, but I kept listening to the Supergirl Radio podcast because I didn't feel like I didn't have the time to watch the show, but I enjoyed hearing the women on that show talk about the show, especially as it seemingly declined in quality.
Okay.
Anyway, they are part of a DC TV podcast network. So there's several other podcasts dedicated to DC TV shows that they kind of share resources with. They hosted a contest to determine they I guess they don't like reading out all these podcast names themselves on their show. So they held a contest. They said, send us your best submission of you reading out the names of all of these podcasts and we'll pick a couple winners.
Well, there you go. You've got the natural voice for it, as you are a podcast host yourself.
Yes. So I tried to make it different. I talked in an old school, no, like, here's the news. Hey, what's up? Kind of voice, reading them out as if I was like a newsboy or something.
Oh, I like it.
And yeah, it was one of two people that was picked. So yeah, if you guys listen to Supergirl Radio, I actually just listened to their most recent episode today. They reviewed a Christmas movie that one of the actors from Supergirl was in. And
wow.
yeah, you hear my voice towards the end, listing off all the different podcasts they're associated with. So
they're like getting to the level of the Great Mates the Primate podcast, where they're like, there's technically somewhere in the background something related to apes.
Yeah, I mean the Supergirl TV show ended 2 years ago, so
yeah, it's pretty impressive to still be going on.
Yeah. To Rebecca and Morgan, thank you for choosing me. And yeah, check out Supergirl Radio if that sounds remotely interesting to you.
I mean, it's a podcast that's because 2015 podcasts were not that big. I mean, I know obviously all podcasts got bigger during the pandemic generally, but like, I don't know. In 2015, I don't feel like I was fully aware that podcasts were a thing beyond a few exceptions, and that it was a lot less niche than I thought it was.
Mm. Well, we are here today to talk about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This is, of course, the sequel to the first Black Panther movie.
Is it, though? I mean, I just, there's been so much that's happened in the MCU since it. Is it really a sequel to the first one anymore?
Well,
like, it's kind of like, was Thor Love and Thunder really a sequel to Ragnarok? Not really. It was more of a sequel to, like, you know, Endgame than anything else.
All right, so you weren't on the podcast Beeper when we originally reviewed Black Panther in 2018. So what are your impressions of that first Black Panther movie?
Man, I enjoyed it. I was really excited that Claw was in it, and then a lot less excited when I saw his actual role in it. But that's partially because I really like Claw from the comics, and I really like Andy Serkis. As for the movie itself, I don't know. It was good. I don't think that. Man, I don't think this is a hot take anymore. But like, I do think it got more praise than maybe it deserved fully. But like, it's still one of the more solid MCU movies. But it also still has some of the kind of bigger problems that the MCU tends to have. Like, you know, the bad guy is technically right. The bad guy is the same as the good guy, like same powers as the good guy. Like, there's a lot of those tropes in that movie that don't allow it to be necessarily elevated as a movie beyond, although the acting was very good, and I do think that the props for the costume design was well deserved.
Yeah, I think it actually won a few Academy Awards for, I think it was costume design and then music, like for the score.
I think so.
I would tend to agree with you. I think it was a little overhyped. It was actually nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, and it came out the same year as Infinity War. And I'm like, how is like they're both good movies, but I think Infinity War was just objectively a better movie. And it felt like I don't mean to get political, but it definitely felt like a more like we're going to prop this movie up because it's a mostly African
Yeah.
American cast.
And I mean, you know, it was good. Like, it was a good movie to have in the MCU, and it's important. But that's the thing, is that I feel like there was more hype around that than around the movie itself. And yeah, the movie itself, while not bad, just didn't stand out really that much either. Except,
Yeah,
I will say there were a few standout performances, like Chadwick Boseman and I forgot the guy who plays his dad in the flashbacks. Like, there were some good scenes in it, but it wasn't a very good movie.
I think the biggest praise I would give of the original Black Panther movie and also the new one is that they make Wakanda feel like a real place.
Even though it doesn't feel like it exists in the same world as the rest of the MCU.
Well,
but I guess in some ways that is a little bit on purpose.
Yeah, and then of course it's fun to know that Killmonger's outfit looks like Vegeta's armor from Dragon Ball Z because Michael B. Jordan is an anime fan.
Oh yes, I think we've talked about that
probably
a few times because Average Joe is a Vegeta fan.
I'm not a Vegeta fan. I like his character. I'm more of a Gohan person personally.
Yeah, that's true. You and I don't know why. I still yeah.
Now, part of what made the first Black Panther movie interesting is that it actually made more money domestically in North America than it did in the rest of the world.
Which I guess is unusual for the...
It's unusual for MCU, any movie, because you think about it, it's one country, or they include Canada, 2 countries versus the rest of the world.
Yeah, especially if it's something that has a broad appeal. But I guess it is partially... And that's also one of the things that, again, to not get too political, does tend to happen is when you have... It's, that bias that the African American experience is the Black experience in the world.
I don't think I've heard that phrase particularly.
Well, it's a thing that, it's not strictly just for like movies that have African actors, but like sometimes even just like movies that talk about slavery or that have slavery in them will get like this kind of backlash from people if it's not portrayed in the way that slavery happened in the United States. And there's just this kind of weird thing that there's this one way to interpret certain cultures. There's other examples of this. Like, obviously, it's not the only place where it happens, but I feel like it might be part of that it was a Black Power movie. It was aimed at, people of African descent, but because it is very much, even though it does talk about the African diaspora, is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, globally, it is still the point of view of, an African American, because there are a lot of issues for people of African descent in other countries, like especially in France, that share similarities with the United States, but are very different, right? And I think that might be part of it, is that it was a very centralized experience point of view.
Yeah, but it certainly was a cultural phenomenon. Like, I'm looking at a list here. The Black Panther is only one of 6 movies to make at least $700 million at the box office domestically.
Yeah. And again, yeah, I think, but I think that's part of it, is that it's a very, when we say like it's, people say it's an important movie. I don't disagree, but I think it's a more important movie in the U.S. than in the world.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Like, it was important for Hollywood, but was it important for the history of the world and reconciling colonization everywhere? I don't know.
Yeah, so this movie was a huge success. It was interesting when we did our comic book movies tracking for the year, because even though it made us so much money domestically, it actually didn't do as well as other movies internationally. So it was one of the few times where giving different points to domestic versus international box office actually worked
Actually
against
made a
Black
difference.
Panther.
Yeah.
It actually meant something, and it represented, just as you said, a movie where a lot of interest in US, Canada, but not as much interest in other parts of the world. So needless to say, because it was so successful, of course they were going to do another film. But of course, then, Infinity War, Endgame happened. Black Panther played, and Wakanda played a big part in Infinity War. And then T'Challa is one of the characters who dies at the end of Infinity War. And then he's brought back in the end of Endgame, obviously, like everyone else. You have not seen this movie yet, but the question I have been asking myself since I saw Black Panther Wakanda Forever is, I wonder if they should have just recast T'Challa.
Oof.
Because there's a whole nother script they did write before he passed away.
Yeah.
That would have been the plot of this movie. And having now seen Wakanda Forever, it's a good movie. Like, I don't dislike it, but I wonder if they had just recast this actor and told the other movie, if that would have been a better movie.
All right. Since I haven't seen it, I'm going to ask you one question. Was it as jarring or as obvious was it a completely different script, or did they kind of adapt it?
It sounds like it's a completely different script.
Okay, because I was going to say, was it like, the first Ant-Man, where it was like super obvious which ones were the original script and which ones were different?
Yeah, because from what I understand, the first script would have dealt with T'Challa dealing with the consequences of the blip and how that was affecting Wakanda.
Right.
Whereas in Wakanda Forever, the blip's mentioned like once.
So here's the thing. And again, this is, not necessarily taking it for what the movie that actually happened, but like looking at other situations. Like, just because I feel like there is this kind of consensus that like they've been messing up mentioning the blip. Like, it's one of the problems with the MCU right now is they can't make up their mind whether the blip actually affected everybody or not. Like, what's in place, and how is it affecting people on a global scale and on an individual scale, right? Because pretty much all the TV shows except for Loki hit on it, but none of them are, once again, there's very inconsistent. Do you think? I don't think having it being a central plot of a movie would necessarily be a good thing. That being said, like you said, Wakanda does feel like almost its own universe at some points in the MCU, so maybe it could have been an interesting way to look at it. But I also think that it depends how they did it, because Wakanda is very much portrayed as a utopia, right?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, the first movie kind of ends with T'Challa going against the traditions of the country, right? By opening up borders and saying, like, yeah, a lot of what you guys were doing was wrong.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, even after he did that, it's not like he did it like all at once, right? He was like taking a very measured approach to it, and it is still pretty idyllic as far as like a society is. Like, other than the change of king being decided by ritual duel, but that still didn't really affect the plot as much as it probably should have, or affect the way that people looked at Wakanda. So I don't know. I do think that it might have been an interesting movie, but I also think that if that script was already written before Chadwick Boseman passed away, it probably would have had to be heavily revisioned to work with what the MCU has done since then.
All right, we have a quote here from Kevin Feige, who, of course, is the president, the big kahuna at Marvel Studios. This is what he had to say about recasting T'Challa.
Chadwick Boseman was an immensely talented actor and an inspirational individual who affected all of our lives professionally and personally. His portrayal of T'Challa, the Black Panther, is iconic and transcends any iteration of the character in any other medium from Marvel's past. It's for that reason that we will not recast the character. And that's the thing. It's hard to argue with that, right? Like,
There's a way you can spin to say, "Oh, we will carry the legacy." Like it seems to me like they've just associated the character of T'Challa with as if he was Chadwick, as if Chadwick Boseman was this guy.
yeah, I mean, and that is
Like they
that is
they, they
hard.
recast Dumbledore after the first Dumbledore died.
Yeah, but like there isn't a precedent for that in the MCU, really.
They've recast several people. Rhodey's a different actor. The
Actually,
girl
that's
who's
true.
playing Cassie Lang in the new Ant-Man movie is different from the one who played her in Endgame.
No, you're right. That's true. It's just the reason I say there's not a precedent is because they have been. Marvel has
They're
been doing this
recasting
thing.
Thunderbolt Ross, apparently with Harrison Ford, now that William Hurt is dead.
Yeah, but they have been keeping their main, like, basically since Iron Man, they've done a really big effort to
changed the
keep
Hulk.
these actors in.
Edward Norton for Mark Ruffalo.
Okay, but let's be honest. The Incredible Hulk movie wasn't really, like, they're barely in the same continuity, right? Because, like, look, I recently watched that movie for the first time, and, like, it was heavily implied that he was already controlling the Red Hulk. The Hulk. There was hints that the Red Hulk might be a thing. Like, there was a lot of things, a lot of Easter eggs thrown into that implied very different things than what we've gotten with the Hulk. But I do understand what you mean, and I think it would have been a difficult thing to do. They could have, yes, but at the same time, I don't think people were ready for it. I don't think people wanted it either. Like, I do think that Marvel was reading the mood of its fans well by not doing that.
Well, regardless, they chose to honor his legacy and not cast or recast T'Challa, which the trailers don't outright say this, and this might be seen as a spoiler, but T'Challa is not in this movie. And it's like one of the first things you see in the film is they explain how the character has died. And therefore that becomes like the launching point for the whole story they're trying to tell here. So without any further ado, beef pork ribs. I know you haven't seen the movie, but do your best to give us a possible Blu-ray case description for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
I find it funny. I found the IMDb description is: the people of Wakanda fight to protect their home from intervening world powers as they mourn the death of King T'Challa. I'm like, man, that is probably what would end up being on the Blu-ray case, right? But at the same time, I feel like the trailers were trying to make it more epic, and so I'm going to try something a little bit more.
I need to know if Wakanda is an ally or an enemy.
You can come and find out.
Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, rated PG-13.
Wakanda, beset on all sides by people who wish to take advantage of their technology, must gather together and unite in order to defend their country against those who would attack them.
So as I said, I really enjoyed this movie. The question I posed earlier, it's just that I think there might have been a better movie somewhere. And you could tell from like the very first time there was a trailer for this, like for even the fact that they're choosing to call it Wakanda Forever means they're really trying to like this. You're right. This is more of a Wakanda movie than it is a Black Panther movie. Like obviously Black Panther is in it, but it's more about the people of Wakanda and like what they're going through as a country. And I even remember the first trailer. It's like the text for Wakanda Forever was huge, and it comes up, and then the little Black Panther kind of comes in at the top, almost like as if it's like its own a smaller version of the Marvel logo.
Yeah.
Because that brings back your question, like, is this even a Black Panther sequel? I'm like, well, technically, it has a lot of the same actors from the first Black Panther. It's set in more or less in the same location. There is a person wearing a Black Panther costume.
I don't know. It also kind of, it feels a little bit like, especially, I don't know. It just feels like there's elements of this that should be linked to Ms. Marvel, but as far as I'm aware of, none of them are.
No, there is a strong connection here to another Marvel Disney Plus, actually a couple Marvel Disney Plus shows that we'll touch on in spoilers. Numbers wise, this one, it has not done as well as the first Black Panther. It's right now globally, it's grossed almost $800 million, whereas the first Black Panther made about $1.4 billion.
All right.
Domestically, it's made $410 million.
So it is still doing better domestically than.
Yeah, it's raised more money domestically than internationally. Yeah, 53% of its gross is domestic, 46% is international. But it's Avatar: The Way of the Water comes out this week, so people are saying that Wakanda Forever at this point, a month out from its release, has made most of the money it's going to make. So, it is one of the highest grossing films of 2022. Like, as of right now, it's the third highest grossing film of the year domestically.
Okay.
But considering the first one made over 700 million, maybe this is, again, it kind of brings back the question, like, should they just recast? I don't know. Maybe people are like, oh, I'm too sad now. I don't want to watch this movie where everyone is sad. And this is actually a point Tater Tot brought up, is that apparently she had mentioned this part. This is me and then her. But basically, the major themes for Phase 4 have been about grief and loss. And that those themes have meant to be represented in most of the movies and the shows. And Tater Tot's response was, maybe that's why they're not doing it so well, because fewer people, who wants to go see movies about loss and grief?
I mean, there's something to that. Though, to be fair, Love and Thunder also, well, I guess it did also kind of hit on those themes, just in a different way. But I don't know, there is something to that, but there's also a way to make a theme without forcing it to be one thing. And there's also, like, I think, again, I'm not sure if it's because there was a better movie that this isn't doing as well, or if there's, like, I think there might be much more benign reasoning for why the movies aren't doing as well. Like, the MCU fatigue is kicking in. There is inconsistency. There's a lot of things, like, there's so much world building happening, but so little of it actually works together that it just almost seems like they should just give up on trying to make it as either lead into the multiverse or just try to have a unified vision, or just say that these stories all happen in different places.
Yeah, the MCU has become a lot like actual Marvel comics, where it is very...
Especially when they keep trying to put magic after they tried to say that magic wasn't really magic.
Well, yeah. So anyway, all to say, this movie has done well. It's been received well, but by all measures, critics, audiences, box office, it has not been received as well as the first Black Panther.
Which I think honestly was to be expected. Like, especially when you have kind of an event movie, a movie that people are trying to make for a specific reason. If you do a sequel, well, you've made the movie already, so it's not as exciting that you're making it again, right?
All of the actors and actresses here bring their A game, especially, a lot of this movie is dealing with how everyone feels about T'Challa being gone.
Yeah.
And you can't help but feel like they're obviously, these are people who knew Chadwick Boseman, worked with him.
Yeah.
You can't help but feel like their real emotions of how they actually feel about his death is coming out through their performance. And it makes for some great acting. Like, I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if some of these actors get Oscars or Oscar nominations, at least, for their performances here.
But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, is it better or worse if you're doing less acting? And there's varying schools of thought on that, but can't argue. You usually can't argue with the results.
This film introduces the Marvel character Namor, the Submariner, who is actually one of the oldest. He's one of the oldest Marvel Comics characters there is. He actually debuted way back.
That's who it is.
See, and that's probably, you don't recognize him right away because they made the decision to change. Well,
to make him an Aztec god or something,
or to make him. Yeah, so he's being played by a Mexican actor, and the idea is that the culture that he's a part of originally, lived on the land, like in Aztec Mexico time period, and then they ended up being forced underwater, and they got all mutated so that they could live underwater. So they've changed the origin up a bit of Namor, and they've, I've seen Namor drawn different ways. There's some versions of him, he looks like he's Caucasian. There's others that looks like he's Asian. So this is it's just bringing another, like, Namor is a character I don't know a whole lot about. I just know that he's kind of like self-interested, and he brings a lot of tension to the marriage of Reed and Sue from the Fantastic Four,
who still don't have a movie in this phase/version of the AMCU. So that'll be interesting.
I will say this again, just like Wakanda, they gave us like this whole culture and this whole like world for like where Namor comes from, and it all feels very lived in. It feels real. It feels like they put a lot of effort into making this. I know some people are actually upset that it's a Mexican playing him and not a Pacific Islander. I saw one guy on social media comments like, if you're gonna change the race of Namor, casting somebody where their culture is associated with the water would have made more sense, because for him, I guess Aztecs and Mexicans aren't associated with water in the same way.
No, they really aren't. They lived in the mountains, and anyways, that is a weird kind of choice.
Now, knowing that he's Namor in the movie, does that make you more excited to see the movie? Are you familiar with Namor?
I mean, vaguely, but again, not really.
He's got the green underwear and the little angel wings on his feet, so he's basically Marvel's version of Aquaman, people.
Yeah, I mean, but I just feel like, again, if you're not putting him with the Fantastic Four or with the Avengers, I don't know. It does also feel like, and I feel like this is something that happened with like Love and Thunder as well, is like they are taking characters who are slightly better known, but then they're not doing what they they're not treating them the way they're usually treated in Marvel continuity. So, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to get on name recognition, but then also just do what they want to do. And I feel like there's a limit to how well that can work.
I feel like that works sometimes. Like with Wakanda, the way it's been visualized and realized on screen for these movies is way more developed, I would say, than it ever was in any of the comics.
That's true.
But you're right. Sometimes it's like, why even bother calling him Namor if it barely resembles?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, is Latveria even going to be in Europe? And then, because that would be a weird one. But like, I don't know. It's a thing that might end up happening. And if you start changing too many things, then is it really still the same character?
Right. Now, this movie is 2 hours and 42 minutes long. So it is on the longer side, and I was under the weather when I saw it, so I was kind of like almost falling asleep. But I like to think it's more because of the fact that I was sick, and not because the movie was not boring. It felt very epic. The action scenes were really well done. The character moments were all there. we have to go into spoilers to articulate why I think maybe the other movie would have been better.
All right. I
So
think
we're gonna go into the spoiler verse now. If you have not seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever and you don't want any spoilers, skip to the end when we get to hear our final thoughts. All right, first of all, are you familiar with the character of Ironheart?
yes.
So she's in this movie.
But I thought they were doing the
They are doing a Disney Plus show.
like
but they're introducing her character here
Okay.
to build up hype for her show.
I see.
And I'm like, you didn't need to be in this movie. Like, she was fun and whatever, but I'm like, if I'm trying to think of making this movie shorter,
Yeah.
like the role she has in the film could have been done by someone else.
It also feels a little bit weird. I don't know. This is a legacy movie for T'Challa / Chadwick Boseman, and that's definitely like a legacy of Stark kind of character and plot.
Yeah, like there's no mention of Tony Stark or Iron Man in this movie. We meet her as a student at MIT, so I think what we're in to assume is that she's a recipient of that scholarship he set up for MIT students, but they don't mention that, and I'm hoping the show will touch on that.
Yeah,
because no one's like, oh, someone says like, oh, she's got an Iron Man suit, and then that's the extent they get into. So like, we know nothing about why does she want to wear an Iron Man suit, or it's just all, yeah, it's just anyway. So she could have been out of the movie altogether for sure. Martin Freeman reprises his role from the last film.
Oh, that was to be expected. I feel
his role. It turns out that Elaine from Seinfeld, the woman who's like in. So she's in the movie, and it turns out she's his ex-wife.
Oh, okay.
So they have a lot of scenes together. She works for the government. We don't get any hints about her assembling her Thunderbolts team anymore, but it was like, hey, like she's actually in a movie and not just a post-credit scene or one of the shows.
Yeah.
So that was something.
A step in the right direction.
Here's the thing. Okay. So the first Black Panther movie takes place right after Civil War because it shows that his father has just died, and it's all about T'Challa becoming king.
Yeah.
The Black Panther movie ends with him becoming king and opening up the borders. And then we're meant to believe that a few years passed, even though the movies were released like 3 months apart, there is supposed to be a passage of like 2 years between the end of Black Panther and then Infinity War. So we see T'Challa in Infinity War, Wakanda's opened up, they're working with the Avengers, and then he blips, right? He disappears. 5 years go by. We don't really get any sense of what's happened in Wakanda during the blip. We see Okoye in one scene, and that's about it. And then Endgame happens. He comes back to life.
And Wakanda is ready to fight with him. Or with Wong.
Yeah, and they're ready to fight. And then this movie basically suggests that. So the opening scene, it's like we find out T'Challa has died, and then time skips ahead 1 year. So I think what they're trying to say is that shortly after Endgame, T'Challa dies.
Okay.
And then the events of this film take place 1 year after his death.
Which chronologically puts it after most of the things that have come out recently.
Yeah. But so here's the thing. T'Challa was gone for 5 years during the blip. So that means the country would have had to mourn him and learn how to move on without him.
Right.
Already. And I'm thinking about the timeline here. It's like he's basically only been king for maybe 3 years at the time that he dies in this film. The country had to live 5 years without him. But then when he dies in this movie, everyone's sad, and it's like most of you have already lived through the process of losing him.
That's true.
And he wasn't king for in the long grand scheme of things, like his father was king for decades. Like he was I don't mean to, it's like he was king for such a short period of time. It's like, and then in the film, after he dies, Wakanda closes all their borders again.
Well, that part I think makes sense for 2 reasons. One, he didn't leave an heir. And 2, it does look, isolationism is a hard policy to get rid of, especially if you're, if it is short-lived, or if the one person who was in charge of it left right away. Because like his sister was kind of on his side for that, but kind of also not. And most of the other people in Wakanda were definitely against it. So I feel like it's not that weird that they shut back down after the one guy who wanted it to stay open died.
Yeah, and I guess this is where we have to fill in gaps because we don't know what they did during the 5 years of the blip.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they closed their doors during the 5 year of the blip too, which actually makes a lot more sense and is more coherent with everything else we know about the blip, right? Because
But if they love him so much as a king, why would you go back on like the big thing that he was about changing? Like about his, like, this was like his legacy as king, and we're like, we love him, we want to honor him. We're gonna go back on the one thing that he was like very clear about as king.
yeah, but at the same time, there is also the issue of what happened during Infinity Wars might have changed T'Challa's mind a little bit too. Like Wakanda doesn't see. That's again what, like, in Infinity Wars, Wakanda doesn't seem very open.
I mean, anyway. All I'm trying to say here is
No,
everyone's
I know I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I'm just saying that I think it is also a problem the MCU has had with Wakanda generally, and again, part of why I said that thing that I said about, well, is it really a sequel? And I really don't think it is.
Yeah, because Namor's big issue is that there is some vibranium under his country, and the Americans have finally made a machine that can actually track where vibranium is. So because Wakanda's borders are all shut and they can't get in, everyone's now going to Namor's country to try and get vibranium, and Namor wants to protect his country, so he tells the Wakandans, hey, kill the scientist who made this machine, or I will come and attack you myself.
Why doesn't he kill the scientist who made this machine? I
think
don't know. I feel like killing one guy is a lot simpler than attacking an entire country.
Well, I think he's just trying to have them do his dirty work for him. Like, I think I think the idea is that his country is still hid, like nobody knows it exists.
Right.
So he doesn't want to draw attention to himself.
Okay.
So and the scientist is Ironheart, like this super genius girl who's the one who made this machine. So the movie becomes about protecting her from Namor, which people have pointed out is kind of a thing we've seen a lot of in Phase 4, like kind of like in Doctor Strange 2, where the whole movie becomes about protecting someone from someone else.
Well, I mean, it's what happens when you're trying to change your roster from Avengers to Young Avengers.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I'm spoiling this movie for you, but
I really don't care.
The Queen, like the T'Challa and Shuri's mother,
T'Challa's mom, yeah.
She dies in this movie.
Was she the queen? Was she Queen Regent? Like,
yeah.
Who took over?
She became the person in charge.
The Regent, okay.
So she ends up dying by Namor's hand, and that's like the tipping point where, like, you can see throughout the movie Shuri is like having a hard time dealing with her brother being gone, and then her mother dying too kind of puts her over the edge.
And she starts murdering everyone.
Well, so this is okay.
I liked your hesitation there to my ridiculous comment. Would you have gone more for the forgiveness is something that will help you move on trope?
So there's a Batman comic called Battle for the Cowl. It was a mini series that was done after Batman died for the first time. And there's like all the Robins are all thinking I'm going to become Batman. And so it's a mini series where they all dress up like Batman and they basically fight it out to decide who will actually become the next Batman.
I mean, it's pretty obviously Nightwing, but anyways.
Yes, and that's it. But
no, I know,
would
but in this
case,
case,
something like that here, because there are, especially since the cast of Black Panther has so many strong female characters, there are several different choices. And in the film itself, there's never really any discussion of anyone except Shuri taking on the role of Black Panther. Because you have Nakia and Okoye, who are both accomplished warriors that would do anything for their country. And then it ends up being Shuri, of course, and they didn't like.
No, because the Black Panther is the leader too. It's not just.
They've made it clear in all of her appearances that Shuri is not like, she's not a traditionalist. She just wants to be a scientist. Like, she doesn't actually want to fight. Like, she's more of a Q than a Bond. And in the end, yeah, she becomes Black Panther and she does all the fighting, but then she has no interest in ruling the country. Like, she kind of like leaves it for what's his name? M'Baku.
Oh, okay.
He could have become the new Black Panther in theory.
Yeah, that would have been a much more obvious choice, especially if you're going to make him the leader.
And then this is the other reason why I wonder if they should have just recast T'Challa, because the movie has gotten some negative press because it's another story of a female character replacing a male character, which has happened a lot in Phase 4. And if they had just, the movie got that negative attention, it's not deserved.
Yeah, but it's there.
It's like if they had found a way to recast T'Challa, then they could have avoided, like, I'm not saying never make Shuri
or
Black
make
Panther.
M'Baku the Black Panther instead of just having him. I don't know.
Yeah, some people have gone so far as to claim that the movie is too female focused. Like there's a coworker I have. She's a woman, and she said that she felt the movie was too focused on women, which I thought was interesting because most of the principal cast of the first Black Panther that were men, like, their characters were killed off. Like, Killmonger dies, Forrest Whitaker's character's killed, and then of course the first kid, the T'Chaka, is dead at the start of the film, and then Chadwick died in real life.
M'Baku survives,
and then the only other male character from the first one that's still alive is the one that Daniel Kaluuya played, who like became a traitor. But I guess,
well, there's also Martin Freeman.
And Martin Freeman. Yes, let's make Martin Freeman Black Panther. That would have gone over real well.
Oh god, that would be amazing. Like, terrible, but really funny.
Yeah. So I think Shuri being Black Panther will actually be a good thing for the MCU going forward, because she's a different character from T'Challa. She thinks differently than him. She is much more about embracing technology than tradition. My problem is that I actually really liked T'Challa as a character. He was so different from most of the other Marvel characters. He wasn't quippy, and he had a sense of, he had a nobility about him. Like, he was kind of like Captain America, but different, because he actually, he had a regality to him that Shuri just doesn't have, because she's a different character.
Yeah, which I think is the other reason I think that M'Baku would actually make more sense. Like, because here's the thing. I do think Shuri makes more sense as the ruler taking over for her brother, but like, because, and again, like you said, she doesn't really like traditional things, so wouldn't it just make more sense for her to like struggle with it and be like, oh, maybe I want to be the Black Panther, maybe I don't, and then just name M'Baku the Black Panther, but focus on the guardian spirit aspect of the Black Panther more rather than the ruler aspect, and then just have M'Baku become the Black Panther and become like a much more vigilante-ish type, but like, even just like the mask protector behind the leader,
Yeah, that would have been,
I think that,
and maybe they'll go that route, or actually it'll be the reverse, because Shuri is firmly established as Black Panther, but then M'Baku is seemingly
the
set
ruler,
up to, like,
and then
in the country.
Yeah, but then, like you said, both from their character point of view and from everything else that happened with the traditions of Wakanda, that makes less sense.
Yeah. And then in the post-credit scene, we find out that Nakia, who was his love interest in the last film, has a 5-year-old son who is technically the heir to the throne.
Oh, well, okay.
So we got a real sword in the stone type situation here.
So
So it's like I don't know what they're doing. Why are they telling us this? Is this their way of saying they're giving Shuri like a get out of having to be Black Panther free card? So she's like, well, I don't have to be Black Panther, or it's like, oh, I only have to do this for a number like a certain amount of time until this kid's old enough to do it. I don't. Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're trying to do there.
Yeah, it does seem like that. I see what you mean now. When you said that there might be a better movie in there.
Because the geopolitics of this was very interesting. The fact that, yeah, we have these different countries and the rest of the world wants what Wakanda has, but Wakanda is in a position where they want to share. So, and then Namor comes in and he's like trying to protect his people. So again, you can kind of see where he's coming from, but he's obviously just going a little too intense about it.
And it sounds like it's slightly more intelligent geopolitics than Snowy Owl was, like better thought out.
Yeah. So, I mean, going from here, I don't know if I just don't know. It's hard for me to get a sense like where is the MCU, like where are they going with the, because they've obviously established Shuri as Black Panther now, and maybe because she's won't have the responsibilities of ruling the country, that she'll have more freedom to be part of like a hero team or something.
Yeah, I guess that's probably what they're aiming for, is just making her available to do superhero things. And I guess in that sense, it does kind of make sense because that's what they wanted. But also but also, who's replacing Stark as the genius then? Is it going to be her? Is it going to be Reed Richards when they eventually do have that? Is it going to be like?
Well, it's Ironheart technically. It could be her because like she's this genius. There's no one in the entire world that could build this machine to find vibranium except for the 17-year-old genius who's going to MIT.
Yeah, except Reed Richards is the smartest man in the world.
Well, maybe he's been stuck in another dimension or something all this time.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But where he was a teenager when he got hit by the meteorite in the Fan Four Stick movie is actually canon. But like, yeah, I don't know. It does feel a little weird for her to be there and not. I don't know. It will be interesting, but like you said, it does seem to beg more questions than answers.
So, coming around to final thoughts, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. It's a very moving story. They found a way to take the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman in real life and infuse a lot of great character drama into this film. I cried a few times, and you could see the actors on screen were clearly, as I said before, relaying their real emotions associated with Chadwick's passing onto T'Challa. I've heard one person say that this is like a very abbreviated version of the entire grieving process because it kind of moves through all the stages of grief pretty quickly from beginning to end. The world building, even though it doesn't feel as connected to other parts of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's very interesting, and exploring these different cultures is very neat. The villain is very sympathetic. I'm still on the fence. I don't know if choosing to not recast T'Challa was the right choice. So
are
for
there
me,
any? You said there were no. Sorry, yeah. Sorry, I just remembered Immortals was a thing.
Eternals.
That didn't come into play either, did it?
No.
Okay.
So with that all being said, I'll give Black Panther: Wakanda Forever 3.2 out of 4 bad cookies.
I'll currently give it a 3 out of 4 bad cookies. Because it sounds like it's going to give me more to nitpick about the MCU, and I don't want more to nitpick. I've already done it enough, but it does still sound like a good product. So, and I reserve my right to change it.
So Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is now in theaters. It's been out for about a month now, and the new Avatar movie is coming out this week. So it'll probably have fewer screens. They haven't announced when this one's going to be going on Disney Plus. So if you're just expecting to get the same 45-day release as other Marvel movies, I'm not sure that'll actually happen with this one. But
they did make an announcement saying it would be after its theatrical release is done, though.
Right. So check it out. For the first time in a while, we actually have a piece of mail. So we're going to go inside the bat jar now, and Beeper, read out our mail for us.
All right. Hi, I'm slowly catching up on your podcast. Just got to episode 100. Enjoying it a lot so far. I am wondering, have you ever done an episode about the biopunk genre? I just started reading a book in this genre, and I'm not really familiar with biopunk at all, so it would be interesting to learn more about it. On that subject, have you ever done episodes on the related and much more popular genre of cyberpunk and or steampunk? Could be ideas for the bat jar. If you're still doing things that way, lol.
So that was from Dante DeLuca. I'm just Googling biopunk right now because I've never heard of it before. I've heard of cyberpunk and I've heard of steampunk. Have you heard of biopunk before?
Biopunk is wait, you've seen Arcane, right?
No.
Oh. Okay. I feel like biopunk is Zon, but you don't. Okay.
So Wikipedia says, biopunk is a subgenre of science fiction that focuses on biotechnology. It is derived from cyberpunk, but focuses on the implications of biotechnology rather than mechanical cyberware and information technology.
Yeah, okay.
Biopunk is concerned with synthetic biology. So, okay, in Batman Beyond, they have these characters called splicers who are they're teenagers who like take drugs to basically give them animal features. Would that be considered biopunk?
Kind of, but it would be more because it's more akin, like it's more concerned with like the kind of societal aspect of science fiction. It would be more like this is the way society is going.
Okay. There's one of the questions people ask: is Evangelion a biopunk? Is Frankenstein a biopunk?
Evangelion, no. Frankenstein, well, no, because that's the thing, is Frankenstein... Well, okay, I would say no, just because they don't directly deal with the societal implications. It's just isolated incidents. But if in a world where, like, you know, Dr. Frankenstein had published his research and everybody else started to agree with him and kind of follow that line, then yes. And Eva's in a weird place, kind of, because they're not
there
robots.
Is like a biological component to their interface.
Yeah, but also, I mean, yeah, maybe Evangelion would be, but but Evangelion is kind of it's a very weird thing. Like in every way, it's just weird. Yeah. So I don't think you could necessarily pigeonhole it into that aspect.
But I'm definitely keen on talking about this stuff. I mean, I think Batman Beyond counts as cyberpunk, or at least cyberpunk-esque.
Yeah, but I do think that if we do talk about it, it could be a good idea for you to watch some of Arcane, because it is definitely a biopunk versus steampunk kind of thing, but with magic.
Got it. Okay. So we'll add all that to the batchar. Thank you, Dante, for writing in. And if you want to reach us like Dante, we can tell you how.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
So this is normally when we would go inside the Bat Jar and pull out our topic for our next episode. But our next episode will come out in the Christmas seasons, and we haven't talked about any Christmassy stuff yet. So if you've listened to this show for long enough, you know that we have 3 different kinds of Christmas movies: A, B, and C. We've done episodes about the best A-type Christmas movies, I think. We've definitely done one about the best C-type Christmas movies. So that leaves the B-types, and these are the ones that are like the most nebulous, the hardest to define. So in our next episode, which will come out after Christmas, but still in the Christmas season, we will be talking about B-type Christmas movies, and we'll even try and guess as to if they actually make these anymore. So come back to the Bachelor podcast next time when we talk about B-type Christmas movies. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
And don't forget to write to the big lumberjack toy maker.